Make it.
How you doing?
Not too bad.
Yeah?
Yeah.
That's good to hear.
I got clothes on the line. I'm one of those people that checks the weather to see if I can do laundry so that my sheets and t-shirts will smell nice.
You're smart, is what you're saying.
I'm an old lady, maybe.
You're
My mom was like this. She'd get up at 5 a.m. She would be the first one in the community to have clothes on the line. It was a thing.
Are you excited to get on the line?
I'm excited to take them off the line and just have that fresh clothesline scent.
Well,
it's one of my favorite smells.
You can't do it all the time. We have to take advantage of the days when we can.
Exactly.
What are your favorite smells?
Clothes on the clothesline. Legit. That is one. I always loved the smell of my father's pipe tobacco.
Oh, yeah.
It was like a cherry flavor. So that was one. And I really like clover in the spring when the clover fields blossom.
Oh,
I grew up in the valley, so there were a lot of those.
nice.
How about you?
The ocean from late April to about now. It kind of loses the smell. There's this smell. It almost smells like fresh laundry off a line. It's not every night, but it's like this really fresh. It's not even the salty smell, but it almost smells like laundry on a line. And that only happens from late April till end of June.
And is it something within the ocean? Is there some phenomena that causes that scent? Have you looked into?
Yeah, there's some. I looked it up. The only answer I've ever found was on ChatGPT.
Smarty pants.
Yeah, I don't know if it's right, but it had a list of a combination of things of the algae coming to life, just certain winds at that point in the year blowing off from the shore on the land. And again, I'd have to read it again to remember exactly what it said, but it has a very specific smell, and it's one of my favorites. A lot of the other ones are food related.
Okay, turkey dinner?
Turkey
Is that
dinner,
on the list?
chocolate chip cookies in the oven.
Yeah.
Smoking, like smoking meat, like barbecue kind of smell.
That always reminds us of traveling. There's often smoked meat scent in the air in places that we go anyway.
Yeah, they are some of my favorites for sure.
Those are good ones.
Freshly cut lawn.
Okay.
Pretty nice.
Yes, that is a nice one.
Yeah. They're all things that typically bring up a nostalgic memory.
Or the change in season.
Yeah, which is nostalgia too. Like, it reminds you, like, the fresh smell of the ocean is like, oh, we're getting close to summer. School's almost done. Like, food, like chocolate chip cookies. Mom's making a batch of chocolate chip cookies after school, and I'm going to get to eat about 30 of them after basketball practice.
Poor Caroline must have just been churning out snacks with 3 teenage boys in the house at one point.
We used to drink 6 liters of milk a day.
I'm not surprised. Yeah.
That's a lot of milk. I don't drink any milk now.
You met your quota, I think, by 15.
Eat some cheese, you got to
get your dairy in.
Get your calcium.
Welcome to Make It with Mike and Kristen,
where creative people talk about what they make and what making it means to them.
I want to ask about your hat, because this is a new hat. And we talked about your big noggin in a previous episode. So have you discovered something that is a comfortable fit? Tell us this story.
Well, you had a pop-up, a vintage clothing pop-up at your gallery, Togetherland. And I stopped in, I checked it out, and one of the presenters, what would you call them? One of the vendors, Sarah Kelly, had 2 hats. And I'm like, I'm going to go try them both on because they both look cool. And one of them did not fit, and one did fit. And the second that a hat fits me, I'll get it, because I can't find many that do. So here we go. I talked about my giant head in our episode with Classified, but here we are in our episode with Bruce Hughes with a new hat that fits my head. It's got the vintage smell. It's from 1992. it says something on there which I can't remember, so it hits all the marks.
Yeah, that's your favorite when you don't actually know what the business is.
I have a lot of like trucking hats, and every once in a while someone will just say like, "Oh yeah, I like those Skidoos," or whatever the brand is. I'm like, "Oh yeah, right on."
Well, and Sarah Kelly, who you purchased it from, was a former podcast guest as well, and she's done so well, and grateful to have her in the space. And you mentioned today's guest, Bruce Hughes, who again is somebody who we've met kind of through our network. Oddly, this time not through a guest, but through a former sponsor of ours, Vanda with Purple Porcupine Publishing. PPP connected us with one of her clients, one of her artists, Bruce. And we finally were able to get him on the show. He lives in New Brunswick, so he made the trip over.
Yeah,
he was doing some media blasts and managed to fit us into his schedule, which we were really fortunate to have him here and tell his story, which was incredible.
He had just put out his book, and it's only been out for 2 months now.
Yeah, a little bit longer, but yeah.
A Stroke of Luck. Yeah. Hold it up, Kristen. Hold it to the camera.
So Bruce kind of joked after. He's like, Vanda's going to get after me that I didn't have the book in the shot the whole time. But we got you, buddy. We're going to do this for you. So this is the cover of the book. It's beautiful. It's called A Stroke of Luck, Music, Medicine, and a Miraculous Recovery. So yes, have a good peek at that. And Vanda let us know. So as of today, I'm reading this, so I make sure that I get it correct. The book has been on the Atlantic Canadian bestsellers list for 3 months in a row and twice at number 1. So he is on a tear. And a lot of this, Vanda's been working really hard too to get him in front of audiences, but it's just an incredible story. It's an accessible book. It's one that you can sit down and, kind of breeze through in that it's a page turner. So Bruce more or less tells the story of what happens in the book, but we get to dig in a little bit further. And he had a rare series of strokes, and obviously this was an unexpected medical thing to have happened, and tells the story of how this sort of came on and his incredible recovery that he was not ever expected by anyone to have made.
And he's a musician, and he lost his ability to play, to sing, to do everything. Essentially, he had to relearn all of that. He, as on the back of the book, it says he didn't know if he'd ever be able to play music again, let alone play music, but let alone live, I guess. He didn't know what was going to happen. It was, a very, very serious incident, and he has come around. He's performing with his band again. He's a pillar of, I guess, inspiration, motivation to other people. He helps so many other people. That's a big thing with him. He is so willing to help other people, to just be there as someone who experienced something like that and someone that other people can lean on.
He also attributes a lot of his recovery to other people, the medical team that was around him, his wife, his dog Willow, even he gives a shout out to. He's someone who truly highlights his community as taking responsibility for him coming around, which I thought was really beautiful. And given the theme of our podcast, talking about making it, that was one of the parts of the interview I really loved, because it's not as though he was in pursuit of writing a bestseller. He just happened to have this life experience that made for an incredible story, and he's a great storyteller. And so all of this kind of came to be without intending to have this end result. He's just done such a great job at sharing his story and helping others through doing that. So that's kind of a new way of thinking about it.
Yeah, and a lot of people could have something devastating like that happen and let it hold them back. And Bruce went in the exact opposite direction and used it as a reason, as motivation to keep going, to write a book, to get back to the point where he's playing with his band and just helping people out. So it's a very inspiring story.
Yeah, well, I know everyone's going to love this conversation that we got to have with Bruce, and certainly pick up a copy of his book. It's in all the local shops and the Indigos and online, and we've got everything in the show notes that you would need to find your copy. So
there we go. Let's jump into our episode with Mr. Bruce Hughes.
Woo.
Woo! Make it! Are you tired of paying too much for home and auto insurance only to then have to deal with somebody at a call center? Someone different each time you call who really doesn't understand your needs?
Yes, I'm totally tired of that. But I happen to know the perfect person to solve this issue. Ryan O'Malley with Allstate Insurance has been serving the community here in HRM and across Nova Scotia for years.
I know Ryan too. He provides tailored and customized home and auto insurance plans to help people save money and get the coverage that they need to protect the things that they worked hard for.
He understands the local touch that Nova Scotians love and the service they should expect from an insurance professional. Ryan is also a senior sales agent at Allstate, which means he now has his own dedicated service agent, Carissa, to help better serve his clients. Fancy or what?
And here in Nova Scotia, we know life can throw a few curveballs, like snowstorms in April, a rogue seagull with bad aim, or your drunk cousin backing into your shed again during a backyard lobster boil.
These sound like personal stories, but all very relatable. Thank goodness for friends like Ryan.
Reach out today to get your personalized quote for home and auto insurance. Call 902-210-1293 or email O'Malley, that's ROMALLEY at allstate.ca to speak directly with Ryan. Remember Goosebumps? Nothing like a spooky twist ending to get a kid hooked on reading.
Meanwhile, I was deep in the world of Judy Blume, navigating life, friendship, and all the weird stuff we go through as kids. Books kind of built our creative brains.
And that's why we're so proud to tell you about Halifax Learning, an organization that's been helping Nova Scotian kids build strong literacy skills for over 15 years. They're also this week's sponsor.
Whether it's reading comprehension, fluency, or writing confidence, their evidence-based, research-backed programs get that coveted gold star.
We're talking proven results for learners in grades 1 through 6.
I also want to acknowledge their founder, Sarah Arnold, who is the kindest, most magical, driven human on earth.
Sarah and her team offer a diverse range of expertise spanning education, psychology, and specialized teaching methodologies, empowering learners of all ages and abilities.
Halifax Learning offers both in-person and online clinics, so kids can learn in a way that works best for them, at home in their pajamas or in a classroom with new pals.
And let's not forget, literacy is foundational for creativity. Want to write a song, paint a story, perform a play? You need words. Reading well means making well.
They have 3 local facilities in Halifax Regional Municipality and offer both after-school and summer programs.
Yes, and I know that summer enrollment is happening now.
On your journey to make it, this is where it starts. Reading skills unlock everything from self-expression to creative success.
Halifax Learning believes every child has the potential to thrive. They're giving families the tools to unlock that potential.
If you want your child to grow up loving books, building confidence, and maybe even becoming a future podcast host, /musician /gallery owner,
head to halifaxlearning.com. That's HALIFAXLEARNING.com and check it out. Support local learning, support creative futures. Make it.
Well, you have a great radio voice.
Well, today's isn't. It's very strained.
Were you a radio DJ at one point or just work in radio in some capacity?
Oh, no, I did. I had my own talk show, 2 hours a day, every day. Did production, news, answered the phones.
Yeah.
I wanted to learn it all. It's still, and I fell into it. I was a guest. And then they said, geez, we could use it was a new station in
This
Fredericton.
guy's so good.
Right. Who's offered a job?
Yeah.
Not even at an interview. Well done.
Yeah. Well, they said, we would like someone, would you like to have a show on education? Because I worked in education. So I come up with this 16-week and new guests and stuff. And I set it all up. And then at the end of that, I said, why don't you just do a talk show for us? And I said, geez, I've never thought of that. I'll try it. So for 3 years, I got to interview everything from politicians to the community, clown in the street, right? Like just whatever, right?
Yeah.
Bring me everybody.
Were you able to invite whoever you wanted?
Oh yeah, I could bring whoever
Yeah.
I wanted, and I was working for a First Nation, so I got a lot of their elders on.
Oh, cool.
I don't know if you've ever heard of Imelda and Dave Purley from Fredericton, New Brunswick. They're very well known First Nations people.
Yeah.
She had gotten some cassettes of elders. And when they were dying in the hospital, she would take the cassettes in and play for them. And I said, well, I work in the production booth too. I said, why don't you just start coming in and sharing your stories and language and prayers and whatever, and I'll record them. So you put them in digital format. And then within a year or two of that, they applied for all this money and opened the Maliseet Institute in UNB. And there were 12 speakers. 12 people that could read, write, and speak at the time left in Maliseet. And now they have schools of it, and like all their kids are learning it. And that was all done by a white guy, right? And they, I'd go to buy my lunch and they got a band number, and I'm like, no, I'm the white guy.
Yeah.
So it was an opportunity fell in my lap, and I made the most of it. And I still hear stuff that I've recorded, played on the air like 20 years later. It makes you feel good. That you did something positive for them, right?
Gosh, that's quite a background. And are you still interested in radio, or are you you're just on your tour days now, huh?
No. I tell everybody it is impossible for this stuff to go to my head because I lost over 1 billion brain neurons in one shot. And I have a giant gray spot on both sides of my brain. You will never get me thinking I'm all that in a bag of chips. I just know better, and my friends would never allow it.
Did you, obviously we'll get into your whole story and how you arrived at this point, but did you lose memories from the stroke?
I do find that sometimes, like people will say something, do you remember this? And I'm like, no, but often someone will show me a picture and boom, memories flood back. And that's when I start writing. What do I remember about this? And because you got to re-encode everything if you want to remember it. So I remember things I didn't even know I remembered. It's kind of a weird way of putting it. But overall stuff, no, I retain most, like my cognitive skills. That's what they were most amazed about. They're like, you should be dead. And B, you have giant dead spots on both sides of your brain. How have you managed to reconnect through all that? And nobody can answer that outside of, God.
Well, let's go back and tell us about how this all happened and how I'm sure you told this story a million times now. You're on a big press release tour. So, tell us your story.
All right. May 31st, 2017, I was home taking care of my wife, had a broken back from a texting driver for about 7 months. And I was, I had to do everything for her. And I wasn't feeling well that morning. And I said, it's been 7 months. See if you can drive yet. Just pack some pillows around and see if you can go up to the mailbox up the street. And I said, I don't think I can get you to your appointment today. Half an hour later, I went to get up and just the classic, my whole right side dropped out and the drooping face. And I went down and she called the ambulance and the ambulance was only a mile away and I could hear them coming. And all of a sudden I sat right up just like I am now. And I'm going, wow. And they come in and they're like, why'd you call us? I'm like, I don't know. So I just had this weird episode. And so I described it to them. They said, well, it sounds like you've had a stroke, but your vitals are incredibly normal. And, they said, maybe you should go get it checked out. So I thought, yeah, okay. I said, I'll grab a shower and have my wife drive me in, or I'll drive in with her or whatever. And she was going to take the dog for a quick walk. I went upstairs and they left. And she said she told me she got maybe 200 yards from the house. And the dog started backing out of her harness, pulling her back. And I was upstairs having the second series of strokes. And I made it from the bathroom across the hall to the bedroom. And I just laid there and I realized it was happening again. And I was losing consciousness. And I remember saying to myself, like, oh my God, they're going to come back and find me dead. And the door opened right then. And the dog came flying up the stairs. And Monica right behind her, my wife, and, called the second ambulance. Then it was 35-minute drive in with the second ambulance. Nikki, I just saw her in Moncton at my book signing. It's the first time I've gotten to give her a hug since. Yeah, it was really, really a special time. But anyway, I rode in with her, and she's just, fight, keep fighting, and I'm vomiting and stroking on both sides, and I'm just like, what is happening to me? Like, why is this happening? And she didn't know, it was like, she told me later, it was way out of her league. But we got to the hospital, and then the real chaos started. I was in ER for like 4.5 hours because nobody could figure me out. They asked the lady that's now my neurologist, Dr. Bauma, they said, could you look at this guy? We can't figure him out. And she did something with my eyes and then grabbed my wife and said, I think I know what this is. I've only seen one in my career. And we have to send him to St. John, where they had developed this new endovascular therapy called a thrombectomy, where they go in through your groin, go up into your brain and pull the clots out mechanically.
Unreal.
Yeah. And she said, we have to send him to try this, and it may kill him, but if not, it's going to be catastrophic, and he's probably going to pass right here. That was the last words I heard until I woke up the next day and scared out of my mind.
So you were present while hearing that diagnosis, or
Everything.
like, this is the plan. Wow.
I used to say 8 or 10. I don't know how many people were around, but I could see in their faces, nobody could figure out what was going on, and I was in big trouble and had no one to lean on. And of course, they're asking, my wife and I laugh all the time now. At the time, we wanted to punch people. It was like, you're sure he's not on drugs? And like after the third time, it's like, no, it's their job to do that, because I work a bit in healthcare now, and I understand that. But at the time, you're like, no is no.
Yes.
If I was, I would tell you. But it showed they didn't know, no. And now it was such a weird thing that now I understand why nobody knew. It doesn't happen often.
Was it, when you say it's rare, was it the type of stroke that you had? Okay. And what made it different? Like what? Yeah.
Well, it was called a vertebral artery dissection. Most people have 2 vertebral arteries. I only have one, and I tore the good one. Right?
So you've always only had one?
Yeah.
Okay.
And they don't find this stuff out until you have an episode. Now they're finding, like, I try not to put a percentage, but I say, 25 to 30% of people actually only have one. Like the second one doesn't totally develop in vitro.
Okay.
But you don't know it unless you have a problem, because the other one is doing the job, right? Well, the walls separate. That's why it's called a dissection. There's 2 walls in your artery. They were separating, and the blood was getting in between the 2 walls and then creating a flap. So it was like, I say it's like tearing wallpaper, right? And then all of a sudden there's a big blockage in your artery, and clots would form behind it, and then the blood pressure and mass of, like, it's clots that big were firing up through and lodging in the center of my brain. And they had to go in, remove them, and then on the way out to repair the torn artery, they put a heart stent, and they had only done this once before in St. John to repair it and got blood flow back. And I had gone 9 hours without blood flow to my brain, so my brain should have been dead. And I woke up the next morning at 6:00, and I was more surprised than anyone. I was still alive, and happy, but for 10 seconds, and then realized all I could do is see and hear. And there's tubes coming off both arms, like spaghetti lines, and giant tubes down my throat. And I'm just like, Pinocchio is what came to mind, right? I felt like I was Pinocchio, but I can't talk. My legs are spasming like knots in the back of my calves, and I'm sweating bullets, and I can't tell anybody I'm in pain. It was just terrifying.
It sounds like torture.
Yeah.
Essentially.
Yeah, it was torture.
So
And
the last thing you heard is this doctor say, like, we have to do this thing, otherwise he's not going to make it.
Yeah.
And then the next moment is you waking up in this condition.
Right.
My goodness.
And I learned later, at the time, I say 97%, it might have been a little less, but at the time, my type of stroke had a mortality rate of 97%.
Jeez.
And the 3% that lived were locked in, which I was. It means you can see and hear, that's it. There's a doctor in Rossay that wrote a book about it. He's locked in, and that was the first one recommended to me before I could even talk. And I'm thinking, no way. Like, we can't go there yet, right? I need to do what I can to get healthy or get better, recover. And I had worked with a lot of kids in the past in education with brain issues and stuff. So I knew about neuroplasticity and Stan Cassidy Rehab Center in Fredericton. I had taken patients there and family, you know, that had strokes and brain tumors and stuff. So I knew a little bit about that. And to calm myself down when I woke up, because I have a big Adam's apple and these, I think there were 2 tubes, maybe 3 down my throat, and they were right down to your belly. And when I woke up, like when I must have moved a little bit, and all of a sudden I can't breathe. And I'm freaking out. I can't talk to anybody. There's no one really, you know, there's people in the room, but they're not really what. Yeah. So I'm like, I'm going to suffocate. So I'm like, I've got to do something to calm myself down. And so I stared at this elbow, and in my brain, I'm swearing at it, you know, move, you MF, all that stuff, right? And 3.5 hours later, it jumped. And my brother was in the room, whose wife was a nurse and had a stroke. And he knew that was significant. So he ran and got the ICU doctor. And he's telling him, and I can hear this. And he's going, no, I saw his arm jump. And I know he did it. I know he did it. And the doctor, well, that could have been a muscle spasm, because they finally figured out why I was sweating so bad. And, you know, was because of all these cramps. And the nurse finally picked up the blanket, and then they dealt with that. So we ran and got the ICU doctor, and he came in and he says, you know, rightfully says, well, that could have been a spasm, right? Mm-hmm. And I thought, he's right. And he's going to leave the room, and I thought, I've got to do this again while he's in the room. And it only took maybe 10, 15 seconds the second time of talking to it. And it jumped, and he saw it, and his eyes popped right open. And he came running right over. He goes, did you do that? And I blinked yes. And he said, oh my God, we've never had anybody make a connection in under 24 hours like that. And by the end of the day, I could wiggle 2 fingers and a thumb and rock my foot a little bit. And they were parading students, doctors doing their precip or whatever, you know, and just heaping praise on me as I'm laying there, exhibit A, ICU. And this guy's already made a connection. I'm like, you guys are impressed with that? Like, I'm in for big trouble, right? So it was very scary. And fear is a powerful motivator. And you have no idea your survival instinct is so strong until I don't know if any of you, like I've had several near-death experiences, as my nurses told me later.
He's just Jesus sitting with us here today.
The cat. I'm alive.
Well, it's funny. I got to tell that story because one of my main nurses, Rebecca, the day I was discharged, she come up to me. She said, look, I've spent a couple months with you. She says, I haven't been eavesdropping, but she goes, the stories I've heard, you have more lives than a cat. I kind of looked at her. I said, what do you mean? She goes, well, how many times you almost drowned? Twice. Car accidents. And I went home and I went, God, she's right.
You're making your tally list like, oh, shoot.
Yeah. So I'm like, yeah, she was paying attention, you know?
Were you or are you now a spiritual person? Like, what do you attribute this miracle to?
Survival, fear.
Yeah.
And a great medical team, because I'm not spiritual. I've never believed. I never will. The nurses dubbed me Miracle Man, as did the press, and everybody glommed onto that. And, you know, that's a topic I really have a hard time with, because whether they mean to or not, it's an insult to me and the people that saved me and work with me. Like, it took a village to save this child.
Yeah.
And, you know, as I showed you in the book, I forgot to bring it in, but I've got like probably close to 100 signatures already. Yeah. And that's not everybody, right? So to just say, oh, God did this for you.
What about the dog? What does that mean to you? How do you describe that? Because that seems like a miracle.
Yes. I'm well known up home. I've been rescuing dogs for about 40 years, and particularly border collies or border collie crosses, because people get them because they're pretty, but they're a lot of work. And this one I got from a medical situation. He was in a wheelchair and died about 2 weeks later. So she was used to being in a medical situation, it is my read of it. And she just bonded with me immediately. Yeah. And like, she was very upset when I was leaving today. She, you know, since the pandemic especially, we've been, you know, just very rarely I'm not with her, and she gets very nervous. You know, she thinks she's got to protect me. And even when I come home from the hospital, like, I couldn't go up the stairs for quite a while, so I had to stay down on the couch, and she'd just curl up with me at night and just keep me warm and wouldn't let me leave. You know, she would herd me to the couch and keep me there. But she's a pistol, that one.
Willow is her name?
Yeah, I can't take her in public because she never got socialized. The guy that was in the wheelchair was there for 13 months, and she never got outside to play, never met another dog, never met other people outside of his immediate family. So the day I got her, I took her to a field with a Frisbee and ball, and she didn't chase them, and as I'm leaving, he says, I'm not going to lie to you. He says, because of my chair, he said, she ate what I ate. She ate out of the garbage, the waste paper baskets, drank out of the toilet because he couldn't reach the taps. And, so she had all these really bad habits when we brought her home. And it was a nightmare to retrain her. It really was. But there was a reason we were tasked with that, probably, is what people will say. And I'm going, well, I just love dogs. And maybe that was the karma that I got, because I've done a lot of good things with people too. And you were talking about spirituality. If anything, maybe if you do enough good deeds, a good deed comes back to you. Because if I believed in anything, it would probably, because I work with a lot of First Nations, I believe in that philosophy of take care of the earth, it'll take care of you.
Yeah.
And if you're a Christian, the golden rule is all you really need, right? The rest is interpretation. So I just go with, I worked hard, people saved me and worked with me to give me the recovery I've had. Yeah. It's not really difficult to understand that. It's much more difficult for me to think there's some magical being up in the sky that said, today I think he lives and a baby dies. No, I don't want to be part of that.
Yeah, and I think it's really beautiful that you give so much respect and credit to the team around you and willpower and your perseverance and your grit that you clearly had to demonstrate. Like that is spiritual, really. Like it's impressive in that you are able to tap into your own human spirit or your own human will or will to live. Like that just feels incredible.
I think my mother would call that stubborn.
Yeah, as would mine. But that's a good word to summarize, really. But like, what would you say to somebody that has not experienced that before? Because I think it's funny, your friend who drove you here today, we were speaking earlier, she asked if we were evacuated during the wildfires. Yeah. And we had this conversation about how you think you know how you will respond in those scenarios until you're faced with them. Right. And then something completely different takes over. So you talked about this survival instinct. Like, do you think that how you responded to this is different from what you might imagine would happen? Like, did you see something new or different in yourself that you didn't know was there?
Because I've had a few incidents, like the first I can recall was first day of fishing season. I'm about 8, 9 years old, and there was a pond we used to fish in, and I wasn't thinking, and I went, where the brook ran into the pond and was chopping my hole in the ice there, and the ice let go, and I went to the bottom, and I hit the bottom, and I could see the hole, and I pushed off and got my elbows up, right? And they drug me out, and, I walked like a mile home with my rubber boots and the wrong feet. Spent 2 days in bed shivering,
God.
Like,
you've been training for this then.
Yeah, well, apparently. But that would be probably the only other time, even though I've had, incidents, but not like this. Like it was just because once it was over, it was like, wow, that you've won that battle, but the war has just started.
Right.
Right. And it's easy to go dark because now I'm the PEA, the Patient Experience Advisor for Therapeutic Services. And every week I go in and work with stroke survivors and their families. And you have to go in, like, it's so easy to go dark when you go into a hospital or a rehab. It is just a totally different world. One I was not used to. I hadn't been in a hospital since I was 2, and I had a phobia about it because I was born, overnight. I was born premature with a hole in my heart and stuff. So I had lots of experience being in hospitals, but not overnight. And this I didn't know what to do, right? Because I couldn't move. I couldn't talk. I was, a catheter laying in bed, and I'm going, I do not want this for a life, but I couldn't even tell anybody I want this to end. So I thought, well, I've got to better learn to talk, at least, right?
How do you begin those steps of relearning all these skills that are just second nature? Like, if I just all of a sudden couldn't talk, I don't think I would understand how I could regain that.
Yeah. Learning to talk and write are probably the two things that were the hardest for me.
Yeah.
Even though I'm a talker, that benefited me.
Yeah.
Also, as a musician, if this ever happens to you, the musician's brain has an advantage because every time you learn or write a new song, you have rewired your brain.
Yeah.
So your brain is already used to being rewired. You know, most people don't think of it. Like I knew about neuroplasticity, so I started working on it the minute I woke up, you know, with the elbow thing. And I continued on. Like my fingers, these two fingers didn't work for weeks. And I kept asking, like, why is everything else starting to work? And those two, and they said, well, that might be the deficit. You know, that might be the line. You might lose those. And I hadn't slept in like, I think they registered 10 hours of sleep in 12 days. Like I just couldn't sleep, and sleep deprivation is horrible, but to a stroke survivor, it is cruel. I mean, it is the worst thing that can happen because sleep is when your brain repairs. Yeah. And I couldn't even sleep. Mm-hmm. So I said, screw that. I sat up one night and I pinned these three down and sat there cursing and swearing at these fingers and doing everything. And the next day when my neurologist came in, I said, look what I did last night. She's like, oh my God, did you? Like, I just saw you yesterday. They weren't working. Like, she goes, how did you do that? And I said, I just talked to them.
So it's basically willpower and trying.
Yeah, neuroplasticity, simplistically, is mind over matter. Your brain is the most powerful tool on this planet, better than all these computers and everything. Yeah. And it can be used for good or evil, you know, and you've got to be in the right place. And that's why I go in is like, because people want to give up already. And I go in and give them that spark of hope. I go, I've been there. I was worse than you were. You can do this. There's no guarantee except that if you don't try as hard as you can, you will not be going home. Right. And nurses can't say that. Doctors can't say that. But because I'm lived experience, I have a skill set that nobody there has.
Yes.
And they'll listen to me.
I think that message is important, not only for people who are enduring a medical challenge, but just a life challenge. Yep. It feels just so defeating to be at your quote unquote rock bottom. And it sounds like you made the conscious decision of, no, I want to live. I don't want to live like this, but I want to live, and you made that happen on your own.
Yeah, I've said that before. I just love life, and I love people. I said at jams, I'd be a great hermit if I didn't love people so much. Yeah, because the way the world's going today, if I hadn't had my strokes, I would have moved probably deeper in the woods and isolated myself a little more because I don't live in the technical world we have today. The digital world just doesn't suit. Especially now with my brain, it confuses and imaging and flashing lights, and you know, it just aggravates me more than anything. But so I'm very old school, and that's my approach. Talk to people. I was a counselor in education all those years. So when they offered me this position, at first I said no, and then I thought about it, and I said, well, it's just a different age group, right? And a lot of them are people I know that are my age and older, that are having heart attacks and strokes, and you know, and they need somebody because there's lots of help. You know, maybe not enough to the public's eyes, but there's enough help for the patients. But I've watched too many family members sit in the corner and just go through hell on their own, right? Just quietly living, and I watched my wife do it, and so I just knew I had to do something more to give back and pay it forward to help others. Right. And I've coached, there's at least 6 people that were as bad as me or worse that weren't even going to try until they met me. Like they were just ready to die. And I tell my story, and there's still a great article on by CBC from 2018 called, if you Google CBC, A Stroke of Luck, it's a really in-depth. They spent a month talking to my doctors, therapists, and, you know, digging, like it helped me learn what happened to me, because all I ever heard was, do you know how lucky you are? And I'm going, I don't even know what happened to me. Like I couldn't talk yet, but in my brain, I'm going, what happened to me? Right. And then I finally learned through this article. I'm like, wow, okay, now I understand why they're calling me a medical miracle and miracle man and all this stuff. But, you know, it's not titles I really like, but, you know, that's just what I've had to live with. So.
Hey, Kristen, do you know what's awesome?
Theme parks? Cotton candy?
Well, yeah, but I was going to say saving money.
Saving money is awesome.
Well, the sponsor of this week's podcast episode, Ryan O'Malley with Allstate Insurance, can help you save money with home and auto insurance.
That sounds fantastic, but I don't like dealing with call centers and talking to like 30 different people.
That's the amazing thing with Ryan. You don't have to deal with a call center. You get to speak with someone local living in Cole Harbour who knows our area, our weather, our vehicles, and our housing needs.
Ooh, I love the sound of this. And with the money we will save through bundling our insurance with Ryan, you can take me to a theme park and buy me cotton candy.
We can buy anything you want with all the money we'll save.
I'm sold. Sign me up. How can I get in touch with Allstate Insurance?
Well, you can call Ryan O'Malley at 902-210-1293 or email romalley@allstate.ca. And he's been a fantastic supporter of local arts in our podcast, so we really give the thumbs up to Ryan.
Thank you, Ryan, for helping Nova Scotians save money while protecting the things that matter to us.
Do you feel like this is now part of your purpose?
Oh, yeah.
Like it feels like you've been put on this path to help other people, like almost this divine way that it's all come together. And
well, I always did that, right?
Yeah.
Like anybody who knows me from home, I was a fierce youth advocate. Like I've had people removed from their homes and come live with us or go to court. You know, I did everything I could for many children. And at 12, I announced I was not having kids because there was more kids out there that needed help. You know, we didn't need more kids. We needed better parenting and, you know, better male role models, especially in education. And that's what I did. And I've helped thousands of kids. Some of them, you know, that I worked with when they were teenagers or they worked for me when I used to run youth programs. They're in their 40s now and still call me every week, you know, and some of them are like I'm dad to them, you know, and that means more to me than anything, right?
Sure.
So just making this adjustment, it just made sense. You know what I mean? Like, because I couldn't work anymore. I can't really do much, but I still have a brain and mouth. Right. And that's why I said, if I can do anything, it's got to be with my brain and mouth. And if it's motivating people, fine, you know, whatever. So it's not, I'm just trying to be the best new me I can, I guess is the best way to put it, because I'm not the old me, that's for sure.
And that's okay.
Well, I would rather be the old me, to be honest. My life would be a lot easier. Every day is a struggle. Like, it depends, starts with the sleep you get the night before. I know as soon as I wake up if I'm going to have a good day or a bad day, just because like last night was terrible. And so I know I'm going to run energy early today. But on the days I get a good sleep, which is rare, I just feel fantastic. And that's when I want to go do things, right? And I'm hoping that day there is things to do, because I know I'm going to waste it on not doing something if I don't.
Yeah.
So it's kind of hit and miss that way. But most days I do try and find something very positive. And the hospital knows I'd love to go work there. But, you know, we had a government that just got thrown out that, you know, put a hiring freeze on. And I'm sitting there going, nobody has my skill set in this whole hospital. You could be using me like maybe 3 days a week, because I could probably work a 4 or 5 hour shift every other day because I need a day of rest in between. And it's just, you know, there's no money for anything, but I still go in as a volunteer and do what I do. And they're like, well, would you come in more? And I said, yeah, if you pay me, you know, and that sounds cruel, but after you've been through what I've been through with, you know, no disability, not even CERB money when that, and I learned later, like $400 billion went out the door from Ottawa, and not a penny to me. Someone who needed it and deserved it, but I didn't have a doctor at the time to fight for me. I got a nurse practitioner a couple of years ago, and about 2 months before my 65th birthday, she calls me and she says, oh my God, I've read your file and you should have been getting this all along and I'll fight for you. And I said, okay. I said, do you realize I turned 65 in 2 months? She goes, oh, because you lose your disability and go on CPP, OAS and stuff like that. And she goes, yeah. And I said, they've won. right? Apparently, I've learned you might be able to get something retroactively. I'll have to pursue that. But it just really, after all I've been through, I thought, I'm the one person that I know that, people would tell me, my uncle goes snowshoeing 37 times a winter out to the camp and he's on disability and shouldn't be. He says, you should be getting that. I'm going, no kidding. You're paralyzed from the eyes down and you don't qualify. But because I could now talk, I could answer a phone, right? So the game is to put you off. Like they almost refuse everybody the first time, and then it's up to you to fight. Well, if you don't have a doctor, you got no one to fight for you.
Well, and it's frustrating because a lot of these cases, like the reason you're fighting in the first place is because you don't feel good. Yeah. So you don't want to be putting energy into paperwork and phone calls and rejection and all of this stuff to get the resources that you need.
The brain fog, I still have a hard time reading. Even my own book, I read 4 or 5 pages and I get a headache or I fall asleep. My grammar is bad.
Well, I know other readers absolutely will not feel that way. And I'm curious because I know it took you a few years between writing and editing the book.
Yeah.
I wondered, were you a writer before, or why did you choose this medium to tell your story?
Well, I had worked in radio, so I'd written some news, and I've written like op-ed pieces for our local newspapers, and wrote songs, and every interview I'd get asked, "Are you going to write a book?" And I had never thought about it, and then so many times I get asked, and I'm like, well, maybe, right? And then I started writing these. I remember talking to Vanda about it. I said, go in and check my Throwback Thursdays. I said, every now and then I do a short story. I was practicing my skills, right? And I said, yeah, like 200 people will glom onto it. And, they're really liking it. They're going, hey, you're a pretty good writer. And I'm going, okay, it's just me talking like this. I'm like, don't take me out of what I write. Like, don't try and polish it too much or you'll take away the charm, so to speak. Yeah, if I can be described as charming.
Soul.
Yeah. So it just kind of developed that way. And then the pandemic hit. And I thought, if I'm ever going to have a chance, it's now, because I needed to wait for vaccines. My type of stroke is related to the brainstem. The brainstem controls your breathing. My lungs were down to 58% efficiency. So that first strain of Delta virus, 3 of the nurses from the rehab unit I work in called or messaged me and said, do not come in. This will kill you. Like, your lungs cannot handle this. Even a ventilator would not help you. So I knew I was going to be home until vaccines were created. And that was like 2 years, I think. Tuesdays, I'd take my mom to the grocery store, and that was it. That was my life for 2 years. And that whole time I would spend half an hour at a time on the computer trying to type. But my typing was like dyslexic. And I could see it on the screen because I'm not I have to look.
Yep.
And I was down to chicken picking, and I just finally turned off the spell check, grammar check, everything. And I said, just type. And 18 months later,
pour it out of you.
Yep. 18 months later, I turned it, the spell check and everything, because I could see it was bad, but I thought I need to know how bad. And it was 51,000 words roughly, and over 250,000 errors. So that's like 5 per word, right? And I almost cried and gave up right there.
Oh.
I did. It was like, I can't believe I just spent 18 months and this is garble. Like, I could read it, and even my wife could read it, but it's like, every word has misspelled and the comma's in the wrong place. And, so there was just a plethora of things. Yeah. And then somebody was at the house that day and they could see I was upset. And I said, well, just turn on the spell check, grammar check, and let it do it for you. And I said, well, yeah, but I said, the whole goal was to rewire my brain so I said, no, the only way I can do this is to sit and go through it word by word, line by line, and do it again. Right. And it took me another 18 months. So it took me 3 years to write about 18-month time frame.
So did you go back did you essentially treat that as your first draft, the one with the mistakes and errors, then go back and fix it?
Oh, yeah. I went right through the whole thing again and retyped it every word and every comma. And then I still, you just get to the point where you need someone else to look at it, right? Like you just don't see it anymore.
Sure.
And I don't, still to this day, I'm probably down to maybe 2 errors per sentence, right? And I'll look at it and go, it looks good. And I'll hit enter. And then someone will reply and I go, oh, I spelled that wrong. Like it's just, I don't see it.
But it's also really honest. It's really you. Like this is the reader is getting you, which I think actually makes for a more powerful storyteller. Like people want to hear your story from you. And if that comes with some of the errors, then so be it. It's genuine.
Hopefully they're not in the book. I've seen a few, but a few people have said to me, they're like, man, they said, I can really hear your voice in that. And even my sister, when she read it, she worked court stenography and worked, around books and stuff. She goes, I imagine they heavily edited. She goes, but I couldn't believe how much that I could hear your speech and voice in it. And I said, well, that's because, like there was 100 exactly minor errors. The editor, Penelope Jackson, I still haven't met Penelope. She seems wonderful. I'd love to meet her. Anyway, she called me and said, or sent me her draft, and I'm like, being an ex-teacher and stuff, I'm like, oh my God, 100 errors? I've really messed up. And she goes, no, this is the easiest book I've ever edited. It's all right there. Like, you've done a great job. So taking that extra 18 months, it not only helped me rewire my brain to be a better writer, speller, grammar, but it made it that much better. And then I took it to a friend who was retired, and I said, read this over and just any errors you see, just correct, because I just don't see them anymore. And then I sent it out. I requested 4 or 5 authors I know around Canada. I said, would you read my manuscript or part of it? And tell me, is this worth pursuing? Like, because to me, it's a good book. But I've never written a book, so I don't know.
Yeah.
And every one of them come back and say, oh my God, this is really good for a rookie author. Like, this is really good, but it would make a better movie. As good as it is, and make a better movie. So that's our goal.
That's the next step.
So how did Vanda and Purple Porcupine come into play? How did you find a publisher?
Story. Yeah, I'm part of the Heart and Stroke. I used to be on some committees with them as well. And we were, where was it? Yeah, online. There's an online community of over 3,000 stroke and heart attack survivors. And you can ask anybody anything. Like the admins just let us run that, because if there's somebody with my type of stroke, I'll ask a question. Somebody with my type of stroke will answer. And that's how you get to know how to deal with your recovery. And this guy, Steve Lawrence, he's from down here. You've probably seen a lot of his work. He was a CBC videographer. He had a stroke. And he said, look, I heard, I've seen in the threads that, because I was online going, anyone know a publisher, right? And this lady had written some books and she, no, I don't have time. And I'm like, okay, whatever. And then Steve piped up and says, I've got a cousin that's a publisher. And he said, would you send me your manuscript? And I said, absolutely. So I did. And like a week later, he goes, oh my God, Bruce, this is really good. And he contacted Vanda and he said, listen, this guy's got a killer book. You need to sign him. And so I sent it to her, and she was busy doing other stuff. And I think, I don't know if she gave me a timeline, or no, she said she'd read it by the end of this month or whatever month she gave me. And I didn't hear from her, and I was so disappointed. And I thought, I'll give her another week because she's probably busy doing something. And then she didn't. And I said, okay, I'm the guy that sent you that manuscript. You've got a week or I'm moving on. And 2 days later, she called me and said, oh my God, I'll sign you right now to anything you ever write again.
Wow.
Right? Plus this book. So yeah, no, that's how I met Vanda, was through another stroke survivor. Right? So
it's unreal.
Yeah.
Well, she's been an incredible supporter of us, and
clearly
an admirer of your work, and has a great roster of authors under her publishing company.
I'm the rookie guy. I'm looking at her roster going, should I be here?
But you seem to be like doing really well as far as press coverage goes. And I mean, everybody's interested in hearing your story. I mean, it's amazing. We're not saying anything new there, just to be like amazed by what you've been through. But it's one thing to have been through that experience and then to be an author for the first time. Like, this is something new for you. Yeah, exactly. It is. Congratulations on all the success you've had in this project. Like, it's incredible.
Well, if I'd have known some of the stuff I knew after I got a contract, I probably would never have even tried, because like people I know that try to write for a living, they're like, "You got a deal?" And I'm going, "I guess so." Like I didn't know I knew nothing about the book world. I was a musician and educator, right? I knew about that. Now I'm into books and healthcare, right? So it's like just a total change, and I'm learning something new all the time. I see books and music today with technology. To me, it's ruining it. Like it really is. Like, there's just something about digital. Like people expect everything free on this phone thing in their pocket, right? It's a library. It's a, whatever. And I'm like, well, don't you want to read a real book anymore? And there are lots of book readers that love the real book. They don't like the audibles and, ebooks and stuff like that. But so I'm trying to figure out how to take this more national or global or whatever. And I apparently without social media, I can't do it. So it may not happen. I don't know, because I just can't.
You can hire someone to do social media for you.
Well, maybe that's what if I had money to do it. That's the problem. Once I did hit 65, like after having no money for all that time, we lost our house, had to go into debt to get another one. My pension is so small, like, because the last 10 years I couldn't work. Yeah. Right. I was either taking care of somebody else or had my strokes myself. So I lost out on that. Last 10 years is crucial to your pension. And I lost out on that. So when I finally did get a check, I literally almost cried. Like I went, my life is worth that little. Like after everything I've done in my life, I thought, wow, that's harsh. Like because that day I had heard you needed to make like $23.75 or something an hour to meet the poverty line. I was getting $33 a day. That's what my pension is, right? So writing the book was actually my angry fire back at the pandemic, saying, all right, well, I'll write a book and, maybe make some money doing that, right? I couldn't play music. Right. So
speaking of music, how being someone who played guitar your whole life, how hard was that to bring back? And you spoke earlier beforehand about how your timing's a little bit different and you can't play lead anymore.
Yep.
This must have been a real struggle for you.
Oh, it was. There's probably some stuff still in the book about it. They had signed me up. They had a woodworking course, and I understand it's to develop your fine motor skills, but I had built, they were doing birdhouses, and I've built my own furniture and stuff. I'm like, so I was out once this arm worked a little bit, and I would rub my name off the board, like. And the third time I did it, they finally said, you know what? I don't think he wants to build a birdhouse. And I finally said, I want my guitar. It's made of wood. That's the thing that's going to motivate me. If you want me to be motivated, bring me my guitar. So my occupational therapist said, okay, we'll bring it. My wife brought it in on a Monday, I think it was. And I was so excited. I took it out of the box because my left hand by now is working pretty good. And the right's not really working, but I thought, it'll activate once it sees the guitar. And so I got it out and I put it on my lap. I couldn't even get my shoulder to go over top of it.
Really?
Right. And I went into an immediate depression there. And she could see it. She knew that this hurt me. Like that I thought I would never play again. Oh my God. It was the only thing that I could always do in a time of crisis, just for yourself, right?
Yeah,
it's like self-therapy. And now that was out of my future. Yeah. So I went into a depression for about a week, and she finally came in one day and I should have brought it with me to show you. She took 2 little disposable medicine cups. They're only about this big, and some electrical tape and some dried rice. And she came in and jammed it in between my thumb and finger because I couldn't hold a pick or couldn't even hold a shaker egg or anything. And jams it in between my finger, and I hear this. I couldn't change it, but just that's the rhythm of a pick on the strings. And so I would sit for hours just doing that chick to get it in my brain. That's the rhythm of your guitar. Someday you might. Right? And then over couple weeks, 3 weeks probably, I could move it back and forth and develop patterns. And eventually they get my shoulder to work through all these exercises in occupational therapy. And I could now swing it over the guitar, but I couldn't, the fingers didn't really work. And I just would smash my fingers into the string, like to the point, because I couldn't feel them. They'd be bleeding. Like, your fingers are bleeding. Oh, are they? I'm just trying to play guitar here, And people would sit, apparently, we had a open space in the rehab unit outside where I could go, but it was surrounded on all four walls. And apparently there was offices at one end, and they were watching. There's a guy out there trying to learn to play guitar. And I must have looked like some freak to them or something, bloody fingers. And I think about that. I thought, I probably caused trauma to people that worked there.
He's persistent out there.
Yeah. And I stayed with that until I went home. And then that was once I went home, I got twice a week physiotherapy at outpatients, and then I used my guitar, and I would sit every day and just smash my hand into the back of the back of my hand into the strings, just trying to get rhythm back. Because the left hand had come pretty good. I could play chords, but it was about a year before, like, I did a couple of shows with the band, but it was like a tribute thing where you're only doing maybe 3 songs, and I'd do a little rhythm and couldn't really sing yet. So it was a full year before I could do a show, and it was a 90-minute or 2-hour show, and I didn't know, I hadn't stood that long since my stroke, so I didn't even know if I could stand up that long. So I bought a little stool, and I still got it, and I took it to the next half dozen shows just to have it there in case I needed to sit down. And I never did, but I paid like $12 for that thing, and it's like my security blanket. It's always there in case I need it. And went from there. And when I look back at, any video that exists from that time, I mean, I was terrible. Like, even the reunion show we did, I talked about in the book with my old band at Harvest. We hadn't played there in 18 years, and they invited us back. And like 3 weeks later, I have a stroke or a series of strokes. And I said, don't give up our spot. And I made it for 3 songs. I had no business being there, but my legs still didn't work. And I couldn't hold a pick, and my face is hanging down and drool, and, but I made it for the last 3 songs, and it was a sold out show, and like the love in that room, like 8 of my nurses from the rehab unit were there with my wife, and I like lost it and couldn't play, and, or almost couldn't. I got through it, but it was a really trying time. And then I thought, that might be it. And I told the band that I'm in now, The Unheard, I told the boys, I said, listen, we're getting really good. We're writing our own songs now. You need somebody. Like, forget me. You guys are that good. You need somebody else. And they said, no, we'll wait. And they waited a whole year, and I would sit every Sunday in the corner with drool coming down out of my face and the bloody fingers, and, and just whack away on that guitar, and they let me. Right?
Oh, that's band love.
Oh, yeah.
Is this a group that you were with prior to your stroke as well?
No.
Okay.
Oh, yeah. Well, I was. Yeah. The reunion show was our old blues band, but I had started this other band, The Unheard, with a couple of friends of mine in 2013, I think. The 3 of us, we started as an acoustic trio. And then one of the guys one day says, well, I'm a bass player. I'm not a guitar player. And I said, well, good, you play bass. He's the lead player. I'm a natural rhythm player. Let's go from there. So we did that for a couple of years, and then we decided to add percussion. And then as soon as you add drums, you got to go electric. So then we went electric, and like, man, we've put out a great album last year that got really good reviews and lots of airplay down here in Nova Scotia. And it's like, music has been the thing that has kept me probably most interested in pursuing everything. As long, like, if I didn't have that, I probably couldn't be at the hospital working with patients, because now every doctor I talk to, and it doesn't matter the discipline, they're like, music should be part of every therapy, whether it's listening, playing, singing. I used it before I could talk. I started humming because a lot of stroke patients are monotone. And I knew if I was ever going to be a musician again, I have to get my voice back. And it's not great. I can only go maybe an octave up and an octave down. But I started with humming, and I would just, get it working. And then once I could talk a little bit, I would sing along to the radio or, whatever, just anything to try and get my voice back. And eventually I did. And most of the time when I write, I have somebody else's voice in mind. I think there's only 2 or 3 songs out there that I've ever recorded that I actually sang, like I would always get someone else to do it because I didn't have the confidence. And, so there's always a better singer than me. Even the latest song I released from this other project, it's a acoustic project I'm working on. The recording engineer, he's also playing guitar on it. And I come in, I usually invite a female and a male in to see, because some songs to me should be sung by a female and some by a male. Mm-hmm. And I invited 2 in, and they did their takes, and he called me to pick up the takes, and the recording engineer singing along, and I'm going, go in the booth and do a version, would you? I said, you sing that really well. He got the job. And the other 2,
he auditions like you do. He just shows up and somebody offers him a job. So
that's good.
Yeah.
But yeah, and people are like, why wouldn't you sing your own song? I said, because he can sing it better, right? Like my ego doesn't run that deep that I need to sing it. Mm-hmm. I know I wrote it. That's all. I'm playing on it, so I'm happy with that.
Yeah.
Right?
Do you remember your first word that you were able to speak, through your healing?
That's one I've never been asked, and to be honest, probably not. Let me think now. Oh, yes. Oh, God, yeah, because my wife likes that story. Your face, if you've seen people with recent strokes and severe ones, like your face is hanging down, and I would say, poof, and the nurses are like, what's he trying to say? And my wife said, I think he's trying to say pee-pass, and that's what I was. Because I was laying in bed with a catheter, my first goal was if I could just get to the bathroom on my own, if that was the only thing I could ever do again, it would be better than today. Mm. And that was my goal. I had already figured I'm probably going to be bedridden for the rest of my life and not have much of a life, but I needed to be at least have some dignity to go to the bathroom on my own.
Yeah.
And because I couldn't walk or anything, and catheter. And so that was my first goal. And once I achieved that, then it's okay. Now you need a second goal, right? And it just snowballed. And every day they were seeing, I could see changes in me daily almost that they had never seen. And my physiotherapist and occupational, I tested on stuff that no other stroke survivors ever tested on because they'd never seen anyone recover like this. So I'm like, if you can get a data baseline from me for something you've never tested on, do it.
You must feel an incredible sense of accomplishment for getting to where you are now, though.
I get that from friends, and they're like, you must be proud. You must be proud of your. I haven't had time to think about that, and there's just some other stuff I don't even know if I should go into. There's been a pattern in my life. Anytime something is really going well, I'm always looking over my shoulder. Mm-hmm. And it happened again yesterday. Right here, I was all excited coming from an interview, coming down to see you guys today, and then, oh, by the way, we got to cancel our gigs. Right. And I'm just like, there's always, and Vanta and I talk about this, you got to be positive. I said, listen, this is stuff that I'm not doing. I don't think about it. It just occurs, and then I have to deal with it. So I have this philosophy of, keep your standards high, your expectations low, and never get too excited. Right. Mm-hmm. And so if I stay in the middle, when something bad happens, it's not a big drop. Right. So am I proud of my accomplishments? Of course, but I don't feel pride. I do it. And then it's out in the world, whether it's music, books, whatever I've done in my life, it's out there, and then that's done. I want to move on to something else, and that's what I find the hardest, because, people now want to talk about this, and I'm like, well, that was 8 years ago, and I'm happy to talk about it. I'm not complaining, because it's so hard to find media today. Like, thank God you guys got podcasts like this, because the regular media is gone, as you're probably well aware. even in Fredericton, like I worked in media, know them all. Most of them are leaving or retired now because, I think one CBC radio station gave me an interview, right? And I know all the people up there, but they're all, no, we're gone. Like we don't really go out and do anything anymore. It's all online.
Yeah, it's a different landscape. That's for sure.
And I'm really struggling with that. And I don't think I want to be in this new digital world, but as a guest, yes, but not as a content provider.
Yeah.
That just seems to go against everything in me.
Well, you seem to have gotten by quite well on just being you. So I think just showing up how you choose to show up in the world is always the right way. I want to ask you, because we like to ask all of our guests about their idea of making it in the world, what success looks like to you, what maybe peace of mind looks like to you. Do you feel like, be it from this experience you've had or just your life in general, what is your sort of current state of mind when asked, do you think that you've made it in your life?
Oh boy, I've had so many lives. Currently, like I'm really happy with, I am proud of what's happening with the book and Vanda really helping me push this. And there's so many people behind the scenes helping out with this that are realizing it now. They're like, oh man, we set me up with book tours and, all this stuff. It's really great. But boy, that is a tough one. Like I don't dwell on it. I'm a doer. I don't go, look what I did. I might say, look what I've done, but now I'm doing something else.
Yeah.
Right. So I don't really know how to answer that question because I've never, like, living it, you don't think about it. You just, you're living it.
Right.
Right.
You're present.
Yeah. People notice, like even Janice on the drive down, she picked up on stuff that I never thought of, and I need that. I really do, because I don't see myself that way. And I just do what I do as a thank you to the people that saved my life. Right. Yeah. And help other friends and people that need help. Right. Like that's what humanity is to me. It's not a collection of, it's not a bunch of individuals. We're a collective of people that need each other to get through tough times. None of this, I pulled my bootstraps up. Well, no, you didn't. Your parents probably did it for you, right? I'm one of these people that did it on my own. And I can be proud of that, I've never had any famous people in my life that helped me along the way or anything. Everything I've done has been on merit. I can say that. So I'm proud of that. But accomplished or you made it? No.
But when you envision success, like off your book, for example, like what do you see as success for that? Is it just writing it and putting it out and that's enough? Or do you want to sell a certain amount of copies?
Oh, I got a number in my head. Yeah. Sure. And when we hit it, I'll tell people. But
I get it turned into a movie, like you said.
Yeah, like I would love to see that. And I tell people, the movie Almost Famous,
Yeah.
Sort of like that, because it'll have a musical theme, but like Almost Dead, that type of thing.
Yeah.
And everyone likes that concept. And I would love to, but there's probably not enough time left in my life to get a movie made. I don't know, but if they ever did one, I would be very happy. That would be something that would be a big thrill for me, because I'm not a movie guy at all. I don't watch movies twice. I don't rarely go to the movies. It's just not, I can listen to an album 10 times in a row, but I don't want to watch a movie twice. And so that would be a sense of accomplishment. But with a book, I already feel accomplished just doing it.
Yeah.
And now that it's taken off and it's good for Vanda, it's good for the publishing company, it's good for me, it's good for, the exposure it's given to stroke awareness. My goal is to have this in every hospital in the world if I could, but for now, Canada, right? And so we've made it into an Audible book, because some people, it takes their sight. And
do you read it? Or?
Oh, I've read it, yeah.
No, but are you the narrating it?
For the audiobook?
No. That would be like you would be pulling your hair out day one. Yeah. because I slur, I say words that I'm not seeing, but it's close to it.
Yeah.
Like I tell people my brain is like a Rolodex now. I could usually hit like names. I will hit the first letter, but I might call you Mark instead of Mike.
Yeah.
But it rolls around till it hits that letter, and then I know your name starts with a letter, and it's the first name that comes out of my mouth. And to the point where nurses have heard me do interviews, and I've gotten their name wrong. Then I'll see them the next week, you got my name wrong. And I'm like, well, I didn't do it on purpose. Well, they do, but they notice it, right? So it makes me more conscious that I really have to focus more and concentrate and get names right. And, so it helps me, actually. That's, biofeedback or whatever they call it. I need that to make me a better new me, because I can't rest.
Is the new you still progressing and learning and gaining new skills every day? Or do you feel like you've reached a sense of self and a sense of ease and like, okay, I can do all the things I need to do now?
No, I've plateaued, and now it's slowing down the degradation because of the 2 gray spots on, it's pretty certain my future's rapid, what they call rapid onset dementia or whatever. Like once that pathways I've created start breaking down between those 2 gray spots, there'll be no other pathways. And I kind of laugh about it in a way. It's scary, but, I would rather know my future than not. And knowing I'm probably going to be one of those crazy people in a hospital bed somewhere, but I know just about every nurse in that hospital, and I know I will be well taken care of for all the things that I've done to help it at the hospital. So that's kind of the trade-off, is be kind to those people because someday you are going to need them.
Yeah.
And it irks me when I hear people, everybody's entitled to an opinion and their experience is their experience. But I know so many healthcare workers that have given their lives to help us and harming their own lives mentally and physically to make sure we are okay. And that's when I lose it, is when people start crapping on them in general. And I'm like, no, don't do that around me. Like, you will never hear me. Like there may be, I think there was even one nurse I talked about in the book. She was old school. We didn't get along, but they told me she was retiring in a couple of months. And I'm like, let it go. I'll deal with another nurse. But the nurses today, they're young, and I worry about them, like mentally and physically. They are just using them up and burning them out. And it's because they care. They care so much that they'll sacrifice their own well-being. And some of them got to the point in the pandemic where they just couldn't do it anymore. And they either had to go part-time or quit totally because it just was overwhelming. And so, that's my thing is I say go easy on the few workers we have left, because if they leave, it collapses, right?
Yeah, it's a very important message and acknowledgement to these people that are saving lives ultimately every day. And I also, before we wrap up, want to acknowledge your wife, because I know that she too would have gone through a very difficult time in her life, and just want to, give a shout out to her and the effort she would have put in, because the caretaker doesn't always get all of the, sort of praise or encouragement. And I imagine this was a very long road for her as well.
Yeah, I didn't put it in the book, and I do talk about it in some interviews. The day I come home, should have been the most happiest day, and it wasn't. Because we were in a situation, she was still recovering from a broken back. I couldn't even go up the stairs. She didn't know if she could take care of me. And we had to sit and kind of talk like, would it be better if I was single? And then I could go into a system that would provide me the care. Right. So I sat that first day and bawled my eyes out for hours having to think about this stuff. Instead of it being the happiest day of my life, it turned out to be the saddest. But it was, and that's when I started thinking about, oh my God, what's she going through? Because I could see it in the hospital, and, I had lots of visitors and lots of nurses and, lots of help for me. But she's sitting in that corner, and I can tell she's going through hell, and I can't talk yet. or can't talk very well.
Can't communicate.
Yeah, to
She's got a broken back.
Help her.
Yeah.
Right? Give her, then that's one of the reasons I do what I do now, is because I not only work with the patients, but their families. They need someone to go have a coffee with and ask questions. Oh my God, is he going to walk again? And I can usually tell when I meet a patient, most of the time I can tell if they're going to have a good recovery or a really hard one, or if they're going to recover at all. And it's not, I'm not a doctor and I'm not trying to pretend to be or anything, but I can just tell from the last, my experience the last 7 years of meeting a lot of stroke survivors when they're brought to the hospital, how it's going to go if they work hard, if they buy in, if they do everything they can to get better. You'll probably have a good recovery. But every recovery is different. Every stroke is different, But with Monica, I just, it was so hard on her. And even in the book, I talk about when I went to the World Stroke Conference, and here I'm going with, my neurologist and the nurses that cared for me and all these people. And she still was terrified that she was going to get a call in the middle of the night that I had another stroke and die.
Yeah.
And when I came back, I hugged her and she's just trembling and crying. And that's when I realized, oh my God, she's really been traumatized by all this. So yeah, it's a silent world they suffer in. And thanks for noting that, because they get forgotten a lot.
Yeah. Yeah. It's important.
Well, you have an amazing story, Bruce. And I know you don't say it yourself, but what you have accomplished in your recovery, what you're going out there and doing to help other people, it is amazing and inspiring to other people, and you should be proud of that. And writing a book in the midst of all that, that's just like the icing on the cake. And so we are certainly honored to have you in our space today to get to share your story and our listeners learn about who you are and what you stand for and all that you've done. And yeah, it's
I really appreciate the opportunity. Any chance I get to talk about stroke awareness, I do it, because I knew nothing about it till it happened to me.
Yeah. And
it's amazing how many people still think, it's like a heart attack. And I'm like, no, stroke is a brain injury. The heart is the heart. And a lot of people still don't understand that. They think a stroke is related to heart. And I'm like, no, it's a brain injury. Right.
Yeah, and it's important to hear of like the comeback story too. Like well,
everyone likes a good comeback.
Everybody
right?
likes a good comeback story. And is there anything do you have any parting words or anything that we've missed, or a message that you would like to share with the world that perhaps we didn't ask you about?
That'd probably take me some time, and I'll be driving home and go, I should have said that.
We could also say, just read the book.
Yeah.
That works too.
Yeah. And if anyone wants to reach out to me, I'm D. Bruce Hughes is my author's page, and then I have a regular page, Bruce Hughes, and I have all kinds of stroke survivors reach out, message me. I'll talk to them or their family, by phone, or if they're in my area, I'll go visit with them. I get all kinds of that stuff going on, and I love that. I wish I could, we had the only group in New Brunswick that met once a month, and it was only for a couple hours, right? And the pandemic took that away. So there is no stroke support group out there. Like, people like me are it. You're in rehab, or you meet somebody like me who's been through this, and now they have stroke navigators and stuff. I helped them set up a program there. But it's, they don't have the lived experience either, so they would consult with me to develop their program, and I was thrilled to do that. But I'm like, well, wouldn't I be the natural person to be delivering this service? I just don't know, especially when I needed the work, right?
Totally.
Now I'm retired, so I can say whatever I want, and I'm like, go ahead, fire me.
Well, I'm glad you were here to say whatever you wanted today.
No, this was really fun. I really enjoyed this. You guys are really engaging, and I've had a great time today. Thank you.
Well, awesome. You're very welcome, and we just appreciate all the advocacy you're doing, just raising your hand to be a kind heart for other people that are going through a hard time and hurting. I can't think of a more important role, especially nowadays. And we're so happy to share your story. And of course, we'll put all the links to buy your book. And thanks to Vanda and Purple Porcupine Publishing for connecting us with you. And we just, wish you all the best. Can't wait to see where life takes you.
Yeah, me too.
Thanks for being here, Bruce.
Thank you.
Cheers, everyone.
Make It with Mike and Kristen is recorded and produced by Michael S. Ryan at Hot Jupiter Sounds.
Intro and outro music by me as well.
Cover art by Emily Rankin at Take Note Graphic Design and photography by Candace Moore.
If you cool cats want to help us out, the best way to spread the word is by telling a friend about us. Tell your mom, tell all your buds. Word of mouth is still the best way to reach people. It's free for you and helps us immensely. And if you're into it, you can like and subscribe and all that stuff too.
Another way to support us is through our Patreon. We have a number of super fun tiers and perks like bonus content, handwritten postcards, creative coaching, and so much more. Find us at patreon.com/Mike and Kristen.
For the makers, the dreamers, and the figuring it outers, have fun trying to make it out there, friends.